senior citizen wife is worse than she's always on the news.
You don't bring her here? So you haven't shown her the website? Let me write it down.
I don't know. My grandma is too. My grandma is too. That's me.
Is that dash years?
Yes, the dash. Is there something that
I don't think they'll come out with an agenda. You mean this?
Oh, yeah, that's The Milltown Township Public Library is a civic institution that provides materials, ideas, information, technology, and cultural opportunities to enrich, empower, and educate. The February 20th, 2013 meeting of the Milltown Public Library Board of Trustees is called to order. Adequate notice of this meeting was published in the Asbury Park Press on January 29th, 2013, and in the Independent on January 30th, 2013, and posted in the library in the Town Hall on February 15th, 2013, in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PR 1975, C-231. The roll call, Mr. Seaver.
Present.
Mr. Monahan.
Here.
Ms. Brink.
Here.
Mr. Nelson.
Here.
Mr. Cordiano. Ms. Wilson. Here. Mr. Shivitz.
Here.
Mr. Kansas.
Here.
Also present, Mr. Humber.
Here.
Ms. O'Neill and Ms. Latona. And now we have Mr. Latona.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, justice for all.
Public session on agenda items, statements to the public. The board encourages public participation. Individuals wishing to address the board shall be recognized by the presiding officer or shall give their names, addresses, and the group, if any, that they represent. Each speaker is asked to speak no longer than 5 minutes and limit their remarks to the items on the meeting agenda. The board may not respond to questions during the public portion. Would anybody like to speak?
Just before anyone starts speaking, we've heard numerous testimony on this, the proposed agenda items. So please keep your comments brief. We'd like to let our attorney go home a little early tonight, so we don't have to pay him as much.
It was about me,
I'm John Lewis from 53 Hartshorn Road in Locust. I'm president of the Hartshorn Woods Association. That's located just east of Nivison. I went before this board on January 16th to convey the concerns of some of our members with the closing of the Nivison Library. Afterwards, we were told to bring these concerns to the Township Committee. We did that, but the Township Committee said that it was all up to the library board. So here I am again. One thing the mayor told me in the Saturday meeting was that the main library gets 89% of the library activity, and that leaves 11% for the branch libraries. If you take 11% of the whole budget, that would be $375,000. But we're talking about the branches being worth $300,000. So if the branches only cost $300,000, then they're really more cost effective than the main library. And yet, so far there's been no compromise with the main library. The main library seems to be untouchable, while the branches take the full impact of this decline in library funding. Red Bank suffered a funding decline for similar reasons. Their assessed valuations declined and they were higher chargebacks. But what they did was to cut back their library, their library hours for that main library. So it is possible to reduce the main library along with the branches. And so all of our libraries should really take this, not just the branches. Because once we lose these branches, they'll be gone. We won't be able to resurrect them even if financial conditions improve, in my view. One of our members said that if the Navesink Library closes, then it would be better if Middletown joins the county library system, because where we are, our people are much closer to the Atlantic Highlands Library, where they could reach much easier than they can get to this library. Those are my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Jeff.
My name is Stacy Samuels, 271 Navesink Avenue in Navesink. Dear members of the Library Board of Trustees, I am disheartened to think that at the end of this month, our beloved satellite libraries will forever close. It is so disappointing to find out that with all of your expertise, all of your different fields, you could not find a way to compromise with the public to come up with a solution to keep these gems of Middletown open for the communities in which they serve. It appears to be a he said, she said kind of deal with the town council and the library board of trustees. Keeps bouncing back and forth. No one really wants to take the blame. Neither one of you wants to take the blame for not being able to serve the public, which funds these libraries. When the mayor ranted to us about excessive account spending by the library, I have to assume it was Ms. O'Neill or other top library employees. It made me wonder, what are they thinking? First-class airplane seats on the taxpayer's dollar? Not having enough in your coffer to allow children to walk to the neighborhood library? The mayor tells us these are all expense receipts that he has come and seen, and they're open for the public to review, including some very expensive steak dinners. There are other examples of wasteful spending here at the main ranch. I am here most weekdays and witness morning hours when there appear to be more employees than patrons. If this ranch can use community volunteers, why can't satellite ranches do so? And why secrecy about the closing of the ranches? It seems you did not want the public to know until they came to use the library that there would have been a closed sign on the door. If you serve in a public capacity, you must be accountable to the taxpayers. And it appears that the taxpayers overwhelmingly, you can see a survey that was conducted, want these satellite libraries to remain open. So it is time for us to look at every item on every one. Just remember, we are the people that will be the voters come election day. And I feel you have not done right by Middletown. I certainly remember your name.
Anybody else like to speak?
Excuse me, could you make some speaking to the mic? I can't hear them. I don't know if the mic is on, it doesn't seem to be.
Should be.
It's on.
Justin's here.
If you put it closer to your computer.
I think you'll hear me. My name is Susan Weiss. Can you hear the back?
Thanks.
My name is Susan Weiss. I live at 116 Hartshorn. I didn't plan to get up here again today because I felt like I said it all last time. I also feel that it was very disheartening that not one of you saw fit to come to the Township Committee meeting 2 weeks ago to hear the commentary there. And I find it offensive, President Siebert, that you seem to think that with your attorney here, that his time is more important than his hearing what people have to say. I don't believe he was here at the last meeting, were you? Okay, well, in any event, I find that this is just a travesty. I find that this board, to me, reached its fiduciary duty in many ways. That's my opinion. And I find not only, I wonder if any of you saw the video of the mayor and what he said at the conclusion of the Township Committee meeting, because it really threw, I would say, each and every member of the board under the bus, so to speak. I also just want to say, once again, and then I'm going to get down, I just think it's an atrocious legacy for this board to leave, to close libraries that have been there for approximately 50 years, especially the Navesink Library, when you haven't paid the $1 of rent in all these years, and that's all that you owe for that building, that space, $1 a year. And we can't afford a part-time, 12-hour week, as I believe was the proposal, 12 hours a week for someone to be there to manage the library. I understand you want your books returned on time. Perhaps the bin outside causes upset with people reserving books and they're not being returned to the main branch on time. But I urge you, please consider, I know you have been, I know you've been trying your best, but there are many, many ways to juggle numbers. As we all know, from both budgeting our own households to budgeting businesses, and government. There must be a way, and I would hope that you would take time to find it. Thank you.
My name is Melanie Elmager. I live on Green Tree Terrace in Lincroft. At last night's Township Committee meeting, I asked the Township Administrator, Anthony Mercantante, for an explanation of how the chargebacks for 2012 could be almost identical to the penny to the chargebacks for 2013 that are in the budget. Things change. All these numbers should be constantly changing, so I could not understand how they could be identical. And I even asked if the library director is laying off employees, as she stated several times, wouldn't all the benefits paid to the township be decreased from the previous year numbers? Worker comp goes down, and other liabilities for benefits should go down. And he said to me, the chargebacks, they are what they are. And what is in the budget now, they're identical to last year, that's how they do this, and that even if you lay anyone off, those cost savings aren't going to be realized till 2014 because nothing gets adjusted. So then I thought, well, then why didn't we make this plan in November or December so that those costs could be realized for the budget that you're going to vote on tonight? It's just very concerning to me that this budget is not really in sync with the township's budget, where the township's budget is affecting a third of your budget. And so I think that something should be explored here where perhaps you change, even though their fiscal year is annual, I think you should change your budget voting to be closer to June when they finalize their budget and you know what their numbers are, and then you could have more accurate numbers, because I'm afraid of this other hit like we took in June 2012 where all of a sudden things come up and you have no padding in your budget to account for that. So that's a big concern of mine. Businesses are faced with budget crises all the time, and they have to think creatively on how to get through it. Cutting services is not always an option. They have to cut expenses and optimize labor resources. They strategize on how to get the most out of the resources they have, not how to keep everything status quo. This library board has not addressed anything. They have not gotten to the root of the problem of how in 2 years we went from having a fiscally healthy library system to now having a depletion of reserves, cuts in materials, and closures of branches. 10 years ago, when the appropriation was a little more than half what it is now, the library was able to survive and thrive because they had a supportive township committee who were advocates of a strong library system. Mark my word, we will be back here in less than a year facing even more dire circumstances, because not only have you not explored all avenues to fiscal health, but through your lack of transparency to the public and your failure to scrutinize the chargebacks last June, you have set the library on a slippery slope towards irrelevance. You have damaged your brand. And the last thing I want to say is about the attendance at these budget meetings. It is a big concern. When I was here in November, that's when the budget was first discussed, you had 4 members missing. For whatever reason, I understand you're supposed to account for that now. They're supposed to report as part of your bylaws. They're supposed to state to the board president exactly why they're not here. And perhaps they had valid reasons. I don't know. But tonight we have 2 board members missing. And last month, Mr. Cordiano said he knew he was going to be missing from this budget meeting vote. And I had suggested that he ask Dr. Scharfenberger, who he's actually standing in place of, to come to this meeting. He is not here tonight. We also have another member missing. So this 9-member board is now a 7-member board. And I wonder, shouldn't all 9 members be accountable for this vote tonight?
The 1 member resigned.
Resigned.
So that's why Mr. Convery is not here.
Okay, did you say that at the beginning when you took attendance?
No, I didn't know his name.
His name was never called.
Okay, well, there's no sign up there for Mr. Cordiano either, so I just assume that the people absent. So now you have an 8-member board
Until the mayor
reappoints someone? Did he give a reason for his resignation?
He said it's due to press of personal business and family obligations.
It might have been due to the press, not the press of obligations. Okay, all right. Well, I am disappointed then that when the budget was first introduced in November, that you only had a few members here to discuss these things, and I don't feel adequate communication was given with the public, and that might have been part of the reason. It's just very lackadaisical, very blasé, as if it's no big deal. And to us, it's a big deal. And so I would hope that in the future that any decisions you make are very transparent to the public, and we have an open communication, because obviously people do care very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Mr. Wynn.
Michael Lynch, excuse me, Michael Lynchell, 196 Monmouth Avenue in Navison. Thank you for your consideration over the last 30 days of different opportunities for us to try to reduce the hours. We understand the severe budget crisis that you're in. Obviously I echo the sentiments of everybody who has spoken before, in that we think 10% of the library's budget allocated to the branches was reasonable, given 11% of the circulation occurred. Since both Middletown, I guess, is celebrating its 350th anniversary next year, and the Navison Library would have celebrated its 100th anniversary. We'd like you to consider leaving the books there if you close in March. We'd like you to consider giving us the opportunity to try to find, many people have come forth and talked about volunteering, and while the board of the Navison Library, Navison Library Association, did not want to operate a private library, we thought in recognition of the 100th anniversary, we would try to mount some effort to keep a reading room or something of that magnitude open. We know that there are 3 different landlords for the branches: the school, the Board of Education for the Lincroft branch, the township for the Bayshore branch. Obviously, you've heard our concerns in the past about the fact that the Bayshore branch is essential to the community in the rebuilding efforts, particularly for computer access. So I think while it seems while I would also like to join in the anger at closing the branches, I will look at the sort of fait accompli of that fact tonight and ask you to see if you could work with the township to help them in setting up a community center for the Bayshore residents. Consider, since I guess that you're stretched to the limit, I can't imagine how difficult it would be to move 3 branches full of books back to the main library and stack them with the understaffed condition that you have here. So we'd like to serve as at least a vault for the books at the Navison branch over the next year, and see if we can't find some way to raise some money for a donation for what are clearly a bunch of used books that are out of date, and see if we can't somehow keep the community, the presence of the library in the community there, at least for the 100th anniversary. So, thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Lear Christophe, 121 Cranberry Court. I wasn't paying attention to the start of the meeting, but I wondered, was a roll taken? Apparently, some response here indicated to me that there was no roll taken.
That's incorrect. There was a roll.
There was a roll taken. The lady that spoke here, the last lady that spoke here, might need the information. I'm on a hearing, so maybe I missed the fact that on the agenda sheet tonight, the name Murray is in place of, I guess, Giordano, and that wasn't brought up. So we must also notify that Mr. Dr. Schaffenberger isn't here, and his substitute, that's 2 people missing for 1 seat, and apparently, I assume this is Stephanie Murray. She's not here
That
either.
was a mistake, sir.
Mr. Christophe, I made an error when I was doing the agenda. It's, when you paste and copy sometimes, and that's an error on my part, so I apologize to the public that it's an error.
Well, whose name was called? What Murray's name is?
Miss Murray Victoria's name wasn't called because she's not on the board any
Whose
longer.
name was called?
Mr. Coriano was called.
Okay. Just one comment, hopefully brief. The director, I heard Director Neal say, and then I read in the newspaper, that it's about the money. I think that's an exact quote. I'm used to the cliche, it's all about the money. And then going beyond the cliche, I go to, it's all about all the money. And if you look here in this nation, and in this state, and in this county, and in this township, you will see incredible collapse of the economy. The most recent, there's only one I'll speak to, is the after effects economically on this county and this township due to the Sandy storm. If you read the Asbury Park Press today, especially its first section, you will find that there is an anticipation of a tremendous increase in the tax rate due to the removal, such as in Union Beach as an example, in Kingsburg. There will be a removal of not 10, not 20, but maybe 30 and 40% of the houses due to obstruction from the tax rolls, the property tax rolls. The people in those communities, especially in the shore, who have healthy homes, they will bear the tax increase for all those homes that are now out of commission. So you've got a real problem economically here in the 11 neighborhoods in Middletown Township. I know I can't ask questions, but my mind's wondering whether you have a quorum here tonight to make such a vote that people anticipate.
Yes, we do. Sir, speak.
Ted Kenny, 34 Herb Road, Middletown. A week ago, I was over at the council meeting.
Speak into the microphone so people can.
I was at the council meeting in Middletown, and I asked them a couple of questions on why this was happening. And most of the feedback that we received was, you got to go and talk to the board. They're the ones who are making this decision. I said, well, I heard a lot of different things. I heard, first of all, it was only going to be 2 branches closed, not 3, and then the Bay Shore thing was going to stay open, and then he said, no, when Susan sent her budget over, it was 3, it wasn't 2. I said, well, when this thing was developing, I can't understand how come all the branches are closing. I don't know too much in terms of exact dollars as far as what you have to work with. But I did tell him I moved down here 37 years ago, and I chose to live in Middletown because of what I saw and what I saw I liked. I like the school system, I like the libraries, I like the Department of Public Works, what they do. And over the years, those 37 years I've been here, I've seen a lot of change. And I've seen a lot of threats happening. You know, the school was going to close, things were going to change. And they gave the decision back to the voters. The school board had problems, it come back to the voters. And we, Middletown residents, voted ourselves tax increases to keep what we had, because we want to keep the school system the same. We want the library system the same. We want the public works to keep doing it. We know it's difficult at times. And sometimes somebody has to bite the bullet. And it's always the taxpayers. And the taxpayers are saying, well, let us make a choice. The township said, well, we want to keep the library open too, but this is coming from the board. You got to go talk to them. So we said, then, what's the alternative of not shutting down those 3 branches? What would happen? What's the alternative? Why are we shutting it down? Someone said, well, there's rumors around because Susan Neal said if she had her way, she wouldn't have any branches at all. It It would just be the main library, and that would be it. Well, are we dealing with one person who's gonna make all the rules for Middletown? Don't Middletown people have a right to say, let me vote on it, if it costs more money, let me pay for it? Why do we gotta listen to someone come along and saying, it's gonna be because I want it to be this way? Why aren't there alternatives? Why don't we know? Why do I have to go to the board in Middletown and ask them what's going on, and they tell me, I would like to see the library stay the way it is too, but you gotta talk to Susan. Not as trustees who's gonna be voting on things tonight. You live in Middletown, I live in Middletown. Why do you have to do this? What's the alternative? I don't understand what the alternative is. Can you raise taxes? Someone said, well, the attorneys here, that you're bound by a certain percentage of the tax rate that comes in, and that's all the revenue that you're going to get. And then with the possibility of a downturn because of Sandy's effect on us, that the tax rate is even going to be a little bit lower. But they said, you know what? Middletown has plans for a new parking lot, and the township is chipping in $45,000 for that. And some other stuff that they said they're getting beat on a back charge or something like that, as far as benefits, costs, and things, you know. Well, I asked, is there room? Now, they seem to be, unless they're giving us, a bumps there yet, that there could be some room someplace. So that's why I come tonight to try to find out what's the alternative. Why does it have to be 3? Is it just a decision from one person or the board, or have you thought this thing out? There seems to be more money for other things going on in the main branch, but nothing going on for the keeping those branches open. So I just come tonight to try to get some answers to those questions. And I don't know what the protocol or what the procedure is. You're not allowed to ask questions. Is that what it is?
When you're finished with your statement, I'll answer any questions you have.
Okay, what's the alternative?
Are you finished with
Yes.
your statement? This board consists of 9 members that vote. Ms. O'Neill is not one of them. She's a director. She's an employee of the library.
What's the alternative, I said, of not closing the branches?
You were finished with your statement, sir.
Excuse me?
I asked you if you're finished
Yes,
with your
I'm
statement.
finished with my statement.
Okay. I answered one of your questions.
I said to you, the question that I asked is what is the alternative rather than closing the branches?
That'll be discussed in the budget discussion.
All right, so you didn't answer the question. And I don't know why you're giving me the snotty approach. I'm not looking for that kind of stuff. I expected that over there at the meeting, but they were nice. They said they wanted to help out and do what they can.
Hey, Brock, can I jump in a second? Sir, there's a weird process here, I think it's weird, that in this public section where you make comments, we're not allowed to answer questions. We're not allowed to have a dialogue. After we go through with the budget, we're going to get to a part in the meeting where there can be a dialogue between us. So at this point, the public makes a statement. We sit here and we stare at you. We can't answer your questions. They're all good questions. We'll answer them, but you just need to be patient until we get to that point.
I didn't know the protocol, but the gentleman said I answered the
Sorry, I
question.
apologize.
It'll be after the vote, isn't that allowed to say?
Well, no, it'll be before the vote.
Can I say something?
I recognize you.
It's heartbreaking to see all you good people here, and as with anything, of course you're getting a bum steer. You see what's going on here, but you have to understand that there's just some things we can do and some things we can't do. You're looking at an entirely new library board here. I'm the only one who's been on the board in the past, so a lot of these board members aren't even that familiar with some of these issues. And believe me, nobody really wants to close those branches, and it's not as sudden as you might think. The board in the past, when times were good, we examined our budget and we looked down the road and knew that someday there was going to be trouble with these branches. And you ask why all 3 and not 1? Well, how can you pick one over the others? You know, there are some probably that would be more valuable to a community than others, but how do you pick your favorite child? And it really annoys me when the township committee passes the vote. I mean, this is a problem to which there is not even an easy solution. There is no good solution that's going to satisfy people. The township does not want any blame. And they're trying to push it back on the library. We don't want any blame either because we don't feel we have any blame here. We're a product of what has happened in the economy. When times were good, we were able to be flush and do all these things. Times are bad for everyone. And I know people criticize the way the library is run. They say there are people, they look like they're working very much. It's a very complicated system, which I have learned through the years with Mrs. O'Neill, that it just doesn't work like another business. And I will not stand for any criticism of Director O'Neill, because since the inception of this library, she has worked very, very hard and very sincerely for this town to keep this library running as you would like it to be run. There are a lot of misstatements out there. It's up to you folks to figure out what's true or what's not. But I can honestly say to you that you have some very sincere and caring people on this board. If we have to make a decision, it's because it's a decision that has to be made, not because we want to make it.
Very good. I disagree somewhat, but Rob, if you don't mind if I jump in. I think we are accountable. This is where the decision's made. The township committee does not make a decision for these libraries. I don't think they're passing the buck back to us. I think the buck is ours. This board is the one who is responsible for passing the budget. We're the ones who make the budgetary decisions. It's our responsibility. That's a fact. So I don't think they're passing anything back to us. I don't think they have any say in it at all. It's our budget. We're the trustees of the library.
And to echo that, state law says how much revenue we receive.
Right. We don't have a determination in terms of how we raise revenue or whether we can raise taxes to pay for budgetary items we like. We're stuck with the revenue that we get. And then it's our decision as the board to decide how we're going to spend it. And choices are being made here. There are alternatives, and this is the fourth meeting where we've discussed it. And we've discussed a number of the alternatives. And there are decisions that are being made, and there are priorities that are being made here. But certainly they're all bad options. And none of the options are attractive to this board. And I think it's a matter of finding I guess the most attractive bad option. I mean, it's not pleasant for us. Nobody wants to do this, and nobody wants to make these decisions. But I think rather than telling us you have to find a way, there has to be a way. I think we have to talk about the tangible options that we have. And I think whether now or later, I think certainly the people here tonight deserve one last chance to have that conversation.
Anybody else like to speak?
My name is Lisa McCabe. I live in Newport. I want to thank you for your attention this evening. I know that I was not alone at the last meeting in feeling that our concerns were not important to some of you. The private jokes, attention to a laptop, and a nodding off member sent a very strong message. Your actions spoke louder than your words. I'm a teacher, really of many things. I'm a sister, an aunt, a daughter, a mother. But in here, I'm a teacher. And then every day I try to bring a little magic to my students through books. And you know, I think it's working. Some of them came tonight. I'm sorry. My students love books and look forward to Tuesday afternoons and our time at the library. There's great magic there, and all of our children deserve to be exposed to all of it at the public library, to walk along the shelves, read the titles aloud, and try to choose the book that's just right. It's a joy, really, to love reading, and time spent in a library is never wasted time. Be open to what's the best choice for our children and our community. T.S. Eliot said, "The very existence of libraries affords the best evidence that we may yet have hope for the future of humanity." Make the choice that's best for our future and the future of our children. Thank you.
My name is Esther Nelson, and I'm a Lynn-Brown resident. Ms. McCabe said it eloquently. I'm not going to try to repeat what she said. I'm just going to ask you to be heartfelt and mindful of the children in particular, In a crazy, busy world where there's so much drawing everyone's attention, teaching children to read and encouraging the love of reading is so important. And having easy access to books is very important as well. I know the budget is a challenge. It is in everyone's life in so many aspects, but if you can find a way to 1 day a week keep access to more books, especially children that are struggling to learn to read, it will really be a benefit to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Lobos. I live at 7 Rabat Road in Port Monmouth. I've lived in Middletown for 35 years. I do use the Port Monmouth Library. Port Monmouth School is across from the library. The children ride their bikes over there. They use the books. They use the computers. Last year, a group of the kids came and they spruced up the garden at the library. Is there a way to find, is there a chance that perhaps you could keep the library open part-time, maybe in conjunction with either Navasink, they've asked for 12 hours, 1 day a week, or whatever. Lincroft, could they somehow share one librarian and have the hours less, but at least the library would be there? Another option, I'm trying to come up with ideas. Another option, could we close Middletown Library on Sunday? For many, many years, it was closed on Sunday. It would save some money. It is closed in the summer. That might be another option. I know you're going to rebuild the parking lot. Money's been allocated, I assume, for that. If it came to a bigger parking lot or to keep a library open, could we use the money to keep the libraries open? Has anyone approached companies like Target? Target puts aside money for community. They're very generous. If you go on their website, they do give money for libraries, for all sorts of things. It's creative fundraising. Does anybody on the board get into that, or even at the library? Again, I'm trying to come up with ideas. Money, yeah, we're all short money. Everyone needs more money. But perhaps if working together, we could keep our libraries open for our children. Also, Shoal Harbor, the senior center is right next to Port Monmouth. Many of the seniors, they walk over to borrow the books. Are they going to have to get onto a scat bus now and come over to the Middletown Library? There's a lot of things to think about when you close our community libraries. And I'm asking you to try to find other alternatives to keep them open. Thank you.
Just to clarify some of your points, Sunday operation is one of the busiest traffic days of the week. The parking lot is being done by the township, and the finance committee felt that donations weren't sustainable year to year.
So you mean there'd just be like a one-shot deal on that deal?
Hi, my name is Angela Kwan. I live at 21 Brooklyn, Embassy. And I really working hard to you're in my clothes, our library. And I know how optimistic Michelle's works. You've got that very beautiful views. I worked at NYU for 7 years. I was on a fiscal committee there. And soft money, grants, donations, run nonprofit organizations. There is not a single line item on this budget looking for soft money. Soft money doesn't cover your operational expenses, but it covers lots of things. There is no opportunity for the public, for these people here, to give money to their branch libraries. I certainly went and looked when I passed libraries in the club. I would be more than happy. I'm going to pay $10,000 in taxes to Middletown this year. That's plenty of money to the township. But I could certainly come up with other money. And I know there are other people who could. And if you gave us the opportunity to give you the money, not to the main branch, There's plenty of nice things here at the main branch. And I have to tell you, I'm not so excited about this Welcome to Universal Class program. I'm certain I could do these same things on Coursera for free. And why in the world does my library money need to go here, and the library that my children can walk to needs to close, is an entirely different conversation. But you need to give the public the opportunity to provide money, and you need to give us the opportunity to look for grants. Because soft money could pay for lots of things that tax money can't.
Anybody else like to speak?
Bernadette Massey, 167 Main Street, Port Royal.
Nice to see you again.
I just want to say that I think it's really sad that a lot of people, I'm not used to microphones. I just want to say that I find it really sad that we haven't been able to come to an agreement as to how we can keep them open. I don't have a lot of hope at this point. I just think that, the things that other people said, I thought of about closing the branch on Sunday, maybe cutting some programs that are here, because there are a lot of programs here. Just, look at the event calendar. I mean, there's 4 or 5 things a day sometimes. And, to let them run at the cost of closing the branches, I don't really think is fair. I find it really sad that the ambition of those who want to see the main branch shine and thrive shows very little regard for those people who can't get here, whether they don't have a car, or their children, and their parents can't drive them here, or they're old and they just, don't drive anymore. I think it's all about the money, what other people said. And I think that political ambitions so that, hey, we look good, we've got everything under the budget, no matter whether we cut the branches or not. And I think even that you don't say it out loud, I just hear it, let the be cake.
Anybody else like to speak?
Hello, my name is Mary Grant. I live on Lindy Lane in Lincroft, and I didn't write a speech because everybody else wrote great speeches. So what I did was, as I was sitting here, quite honestly, I looked up on my little iPhone quotes about libraries. I've got fantastic people behind me who wrote their own quotes. I need to get those from them because they're just about as good as some of these really famous quotes by very famous people or not so famous people, the people we would learn about in the library. Walter Cronkite said, "Whatever the cost of our libraries, the price is cheap compared to that of an ignorant nation." I was up in upstate New York, took a little walk in a cute little town called North Creek near Gore Mountain. The trail happened to end at the library, and I just wandered up there. I had my dog, so I couldn't go in. But on the front door of that particular library, it said, a quote by Cicero, "If you have a garden and a library, you have everything." Ray Bradbury writes, "Without libraries, what have we? We have no past and we have no future." One last thing I'm going to say is another quote by Cicero. He said, "What is morally wrong can never be advantageous, even when it enables you to make some gain that you believe to be to your advantage. The mere act of believing that some wrongful course of action constitutes an advantage is pernicious." Thank you very much.
Anybody else like to speak? Going once? Going twice? Moving on.
Next item on the agenda is the minutes of the January 2013 meeting.
Williams to acceptance of the minutes.
Any discussion?
Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Breen? Mr. Shibby?
Yes.
Mr. Vitcantis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Monahan?
Yes.
Next item is the 2012-2013 financial reports.
Any discussion? Motion to accept?
Nelson moved, and who's second?
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Vitcantis?
Yes.
Mr. Shibby?
Yes.
Mr. Monahan?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson? Ms. Breen? Correspondence? I did add something on your packets for Board of Trustees. There was something you'd like to attend in March.
I can mention that. I'll mention that later. I did send you Mr. Conley's resignation letter, which occurred the week after the last board meeting. And I believe some other correspondence that we've received. Just in case I haven't done so, there's a letter from a Terry Eden mentioning Alyssa Rosen's Job Help Center and the help of the center in helping her get a job. And she won't be attending the workshops anymore. And going this way is from Mr. Lou Fiota, who uses the reference research services of the library and mentions a number of our librarians by name. I may have sent that to you, I'm just not sure. And you did receive, anybody who's emailed me comments regarding, or questions regarding the closing or the possible closing of the branches, I've received many comments as well as questions, and they are forwarded on to the members of the board.
I feel like I've been here more than I have home the last 3 weeks. We had 2 meetings with the branch representatives. Both were very productive. I want to thank them for coming and all the work they put into their reports back to the Finance Committee. Starting this month, the board received packets via email. So no gas was used delivering any board packets, and no paper was used for select individuals who wanted to either print them at home or just utilize their electronic devices. So I think that's a good step forward, and that's about all.
I do want to bring to the attention of the board that every year the New Jersey State Library and the New Jersey Library Association and the New Jersey Library Trustee Association combine to put together a workshop, particularly for new trustees. And several of you attended that workshop last year, and I think Rob did, I think Warner did, and Dave did. The workshop this year, there are 2 locations, and I believe Wendy put the flyer at your desk, so at your place. So they're coming up in March instead of later in the spring. It's extremely important for you to consider this. I know it is a commitment of several hours, but there is a requirement in library law that our trustees, as well as our support staff and our librarians, participate in continuing education. And in order to meet that, it's very helpful if we send a couple of board members to that. There are other opportunities, but this is probably the best one and most focused on the functions, the roles and responsibilities. So I hope that 1 or 2 of you can find that one of these meetings will be helpful to you. You did not get a printed director's report from me, as there were many other things that I was working on, but you did get my goals for 2013, which was an outgrowth of my recent discussions with you. I also want to call attention to the virtual branch report. I had a number of employees of the library, especially my librarians, who were very interested in communicating to our board members as well as the public the diversity of and the breadth and scope of the resources that individuals can use remotely, that is, from work, from school, from home. All you need is your library card as your passport to these resources. And these have been expanding over the years, and we thought that drawing some special attention to them was a good way to go. Some libraries have actually hired a person to develop their virtual branch. Ours came about a little bit more organically from within the members of the staff that had specific technical expertise. We won a grant last year to establish a mobile app, and that mobile app is extremely heavily used. Lots and lots of hits, thousands of hits. People can access their own account, can renew things, can put holds on things, and we have found that to be an extremely effective way to reach our customers, our residents throughout the community. We haven't been able to get a demographic to find out if it's mostly people under 18. I suspect that there are a lot of younger users who are using their iPhones and all for these apps, but it is an extremely useful one. If you have a smartphone of some kind and haven't looked and downloaded our library app, I would encourage you to do so. I've been working on revisions to some of the other reports that we put in, trying to group them in a more meaningful way. My first efforts here have been on the collection and the borrowing reports. And I will be looking at next to come up with some new formats and some ways of communicating the programming content of the library and the use of the information resources that we have. I want to mention that we've had the new security gates installed at Maine to be compatible with what has become a very changing environment in the standards, the international standards for the RFID tags that are in our material. So our theft detection system has been improved by these new security gates. I am also working on an annual report for 2012. This report takes 2 formats. There's one which is really dry and not very readable, which is something I prepare for the New Jersey State Library. And then I try to do a more graphic, readable version for the public. So I expect to have that ready by mid to late March. I want to mention we dodged a bullet with the relatively small 2 snowfalls I wasn't happy with the work of the contractor and documenting that. It may become a factor when we do the new proposals and if he submits a proposal for next year's contract. We may be out of snow season for now, but he's been notified that I wasn't pleased with the work that he did here. Our two employees in information technology, Scott and Rod, have been hard at work obtaining quotes for the new firewall, which has, the existing firewall has past its end-of-life expectancy, and that firewall is extremely important for library security of all its operations, the security of the personal data, the security of the loans and the transactions that take place. He's comparing Cisco and Dell equipment. Cisco had a real edge in this market, but he's found that Dell's entering the market and has bundled a pretty good product proposal that we're looking at, very competitive. Probably we'll have that for you for discussion and vote at the next meeting. Funds for these two purchases, and we also need an upgrade to our Exchange 10 system, which is for email and calendaring. There are some glitches that can only be cleared up by some additional software. We do have reserve funds that are dedicated to computer purchases, and that should take care of those particular purchases. They would not then be in the operating budget for 2015. This morning we opened bids for a 2-year HVAC contract for the main library. We received 3 bids. All the bidders were qualified. However, the bid documents are still being scrutinized, especially as there is only an $80 difference between the 2 lowest qualified firms. So we want to be completely sure that the low bidder meets all of the qualifications that we put in the bid specifications. And one of Mr. McCumber's, one of the attorneys in his firm is a sharp contract person, I hear. And so he will be, we haven't awarded a bid in quite some time. So we want to make sure that there's attorney review of the bids and rendering us his opinion on those 2 bidders that are so close in cost. And also, Mr. McCumber's firm will be updating our contract provisions. In the meantime, as I think we discussed in January, the current contractor, Automated Building Controls, will continue to service the main library under their expired contract. They agreed to continue under the existing terms until such time as we awarded a new year. In the meantime, however, we have an immediate need to make repairs to unit number 3, and Automated Building Controls has provided us with a proposal which comes up under new business. So I have some additional information there. And then lastly, even though my report is essentially for January, I try to keep it to that, I do want to report with considerable dismay on behalf of the library that we have the resignation of a key manager, Kevin Unrath, who has been a terrific employee at our Borrower Services Department. But good news for Kevin, he is resigning to become the director of the Ilsley Public Library in Middlebury, Vermont. So he will be leaving us. I don't know if Kevin, he works on Wednesday night, so he isn't here right now, but he is here.
Oh no, I'm at dinner.
There he is.
I'm at dinner.
Very familiar face. Kevin did something that other department managers did not do, or perhaps never thought of. And when he did it for the first time, I was just delighted. We have lots of scheduling complications with respect to branches when we have call-outs maybe the substitute is also out or whatever. He actually started going to the branch libraries. I think his first one might have been Bay Shore, and meeting you folks there and learning a great deal about the branches. And I thought that was being a person who had come to us from New Mexico, didn't have a lot of familiarity with New Jersey libraries, and he had been associated with the big city library there. That was a wonderful response on his part, and he will be very much missed. So, thank you, Kevin, for your service to the library. Normally, I don't talk so much in the director's report. Are there questions for me on that? On the director's report? Because I use a big meeting item. And it's me on the foundation, too. I am on the foundation, the Middletown Township Public Library Foundation Board, as is Brock by virtue of the fact that he's the board president, and Mike Kansas is also on that board. And then there are about 5 or 6 other citizens who are members. We met on January 23rd. Bank balances are low at this time because there was no annual campaign, which we had tried to do every fall, every late fall, sometime around November. Because of the storm, it was really thought that it was inappropriate to send out a fundraising letter at that time. There is a decision, there was a decision to send a letter as soon as possible, probably within the next couple of weeks, to those people who have been making donations every year, as many of our donors were regular donors, and they probably thought we just dropped off the map. So we are going to send them a letter and bring that up to speed. There was a decision, and I thought a bold one, on the part of the board of the foundation to make an $8,000 donation to the library for children's, adult, and teen programming. Last year they gave over $15,000. We're going to try to stretch that as far as we can, but they do have an eye on future fundraising efforts so that they can give more. With their bank account down and the fact that library programming, if we are utilizing talent from outside the library, say for a family event, a family musical event, or for the Shakespeare play, or something like that, that is totally paid for by private funds. The township, we took that out of the municipal budget several years ago. So they're in a tight spot right now. They did have favorable response to a small fundraiser, but I think one that will be popular with the public on how to digitize and protect your family histories or documents or pictures. That's very much in the news now, especially as people suffered some damages or concerns about things with respect to the Superstorm Sandy. We have worked with a company called Innovative Imaging. In fact, they're the company that did the digitizing and the indexing of the Redback Register, which is our most heavily used remote database. It's used by thousands of people every month. They will do a program for us and donate 20% of the proceeds. When I say for us, I mean for the foundation here at the library, and make a donation of 20% of the proceeds to the foundation for anybody who decides to sign a contract with them to do their papers and such. And because fundraising is really top of their list of things that are really needed to replenish their bank account, they are going to do another 50-50 cash raffle over the summer, which has been quite successful. And so that is important for the foundation.
The next item on the agenda is old business, the 2013 budget.
I have a couple questions. In terms of the report of the Finance Committee, was that essentially covered in the President's report?
No.
So I think that may come up after I do my little presentation.
In terms of the budget?
Yes. We haven't done this before, so I hope that technology will help us.
Yes.
I think you'll be able to see the screen. And some of you do have copies of this. I printed out a number of them. I think that there's a last time. It was a pretty good context. We tested it in the back of the room. There's too many of you.
Director O'Neill, is this the corrected edition you have up on the projected screen?
Yes, this is a corrected edition, and I want to preface that, why it is corrected. My finance clerk came to me this morning with an issue. And that is that because we utilize funds from several different sources in order to pay our bills, the amount that we had put in one column, how we were going to pay for, oh now this is not going to be good for me without my glasses on, the amount that we had to pay for was repairs and maintenance, I believe. We had the original number in there. Pardon? The number 30.
Repairs and maintenance.
Yeah, I believe it was repairs and maintenance. The number that we were going to use funds from, here's the problem. We were going to use the funds from what we knew to be a small surplus, a surplus of about $50,000 from library budgets in 2010 and 2011. However, we do not get those funds released from the township finance department to us until quite late in the year. Sometimes it is the fall before those funds are certified by their CFO and then put into an account that we can draw down from. So she suggested that we put all the funds, the $50,000, move them over into general reserves and put something in that, put the $50,000 of those, that was to be paid from the surpluses from 2010 and 2011 into something that we could wait until the fall to expend. And because we buy books all the way up until the end of November or beginning of December, we thought that was the best place to put the whole $50,000 and reallocate the money. There are no changes in the bottom line. It was just simply moving the $50,000 from that particular fund that wasn't going to be available to us into other accounts. But I want to give you just a brief overview of the components of the budget, and just so that you understand that. We have essentially 4 revenue streams, and I have a handy thing here. Lethal weapons. Those revenue sources are the municipal funds, and for 2013, this is a hard number, $3,470,977. This is the number I was talking about that we believe will be released to us to spend sometime later in the year. State, per capita state aid we get sometime in October or November of every year. We are allowed to accumulate it for a couple of years, but then, unless we have it saved for a capital expense, we are required to spend it. And we have to show that expenditure to the state library. Right now, we get about $29,000 a year. It comes in October and November of every year, and it is approximately 50% of what we have been receiving in prior years, because that was cut about 2 years ago. The fine and copier money is, it's more than fine and copiers. We take in a little money from our copiers now. More people do their own printing. It's not a big deal anymore. But we also have fees for lost cards. We collect a fee for people who want to join this library who don't live in the township of Middletown. And there are people from neighboring communities who do take out memberships here. We collect the cost of recovery, a cost for any materials that are lost by our customers, and we collect overdue fees. So when I say fine copy is the short term, but they all go into a general reserve. Right now, that's the money. This is available to us as of December 31st of 2012. Now, this year we will probably take in to $84,000 or a little bit more. We will have a full year in 2013 of the increase in the overdue fine. It went up to 25 cents, so our revenues per month are going up a little bit. And we're also instituting a new program probably by the 1st of March, which is a book rental program. It's like an express book for a limited period of time and a charge for the serendipity of finding one of the current bestsellers in the shop. So it is possible that we will top $100,000 in 2013, but I like to be conservative when it comes to revenue and not overstate our position. All right, so each column relates to the source of the revenue. And I want to go down the screen here a little bit and show how we organize our expenses. There are essentially 4 components of our budget. The salaries, wages, and related benefits and charges are all in the municipal budget. There has been an unspoken policy that we should not pay for salaries and benefits from an aid account or a grant account, or from some account that didn't have, well, we just thought it was best to put that in municipal funds. The salaries and wages are down $181,070 over what they were last year. The statutory benefits are based upon the percentage of payroll. Those are things like your Social Security, other required contributions on the part of an employer. The health care costs were $810,000 last year. So somebody criticized that we hadn't reduced those costs, but in fact, we have reduced those costs because of layoffs. Unemployment insurance is a number. This number is a number we got from the township committee. The PERS employment contribution is higher than it was last year because the percentage rate of repayment of this contribution is going up for the entire township. So I anticipated that we would probably have to pay a little more here. Workman's comp insurance is the number that was presented to us in the chargebacks. So that makes a total salary wages budget, salary wages and benefits budget of $2,848 $133. That is totally coming from municipal. The next thing that is our general operations budget. And I'm not sure this will all fit on one screen, so I may have to scroll down. But it's important for you to know that last year, these chargebacks, liability insurance, township administrative services, purchasing services, and township finance department insurance services were paid for from reserves. We had to do it because we got this bill in June, and frankly, we didn't have the money left in the municipal account to pay for them from the municipal fund. So, and they really wanted it from the municipal fund. That was something that our CFO told us that he really wanted them to come. So they are being paid for out of the municipal allocation. Supplies are things like, actually, they are not just paper, pens, pencils, etc. They are health supplies. They include the cleaning supplies, the paper, the trash bags, the all the things that are associated with keeping our buildings clean. We have, for quite some time, not had essentially an equipment budget. I put a very small amount in there. But you can see it's starting with these other operational costs. We're starting to use some of the reserves to spend those to supplement what we need, because our township appropriation cannot pay for all the salaries and wages and all the chargebacks. We would have practically nothing. Dues and memberships, that's a very tiny number. That's for our trustees to be in the New Jersey Trustee Association, for the director to be in the New Jersey Library Association. We do a small reimbursement to our employees who get involved in professional development. The training budget has for, I think this is the third year, come only from state aid. The program budget is zero. Professional services budget, we are hoping that we can keep that at that amount. We have benefited from the services of Mr. McCumber and members of his firm, but it is for our legal services. I'll move this because it's sliding off. Automation is for equipment, software, for our support of our system that, it's our total operating system within the library. And you can see we can only allocate about a third of what we really need from our municipal funds. The rest of it has to come from reserves. Repairs and maintenance on a building or buildings that are starting to age have been going up every year. The expense that I will reference later in the meeting of almost $7,000 to make a very emergent repair to our HVAC system is, in the first quarter of the year, going to take a big chunk of that $16,000. For our groundskeeping, some of you who have been attending meetings for a while know that we contract separately for the snow removal, pretty much at the request of the township. They have been doing the branches, but we have done the service at Maine because we were a low priority, and we are open 7 days a week, and so we put that out to bid. every year or every 2 years. And we also got the town to agree to do the mowing at the main library without an additional charge. So this is an amount that has really been coming down over the last couple of years. Service contracts, as you might imagine, pretty well evenly divided between the town and reserves, is because you have copiers, you have computers, you have to get out of warranty, you have to have service contracts for the automated door, and just so many things that are electronically operated, and you need to have that so you can continue to do business. So overall, I believe the operations budget is up by $25,000, and that's because we have reduced a number of things down here towards the middle and lower part, but we've had the chargebacks up at the top, and so those costs are really high. Now we go into materials. These are the things that you can borrow or use here in the library or use in my home. And I know this will fit on the screen here. There is a reduction in the materials budget of $37,202. And every one of these line items has been affected by it. I know that about 3 years ago we were buying $50,000, $60,000 more for books and other resources for you, the public. So this slowdown is definitely going to, this reduced ability to acquire new materials is definitely going to impact your services. Now, in the utilities area, any savings that we might achieve through the branches was put in here when I did this budget. I have not had a chance to modify it because I don't know how the board is going to vote this evening. And we have been running the branches already for almost 2 months more than this budget reflects. Though all of the layoffs are in the salary and wages part of the budget. Some people have said, well, you're bringing people back to the main library. Yes, but I am laying off 2 full-time and 6 part-time people. And the full-time people includes health care benefits. Just a second. I'm almost done. In order to be able to open the doors, to turn on the lights, to pay the utilities, I have felt that it is extremely important to put these charges also in the means line. You don't want to put your ability to pay your gas bill under a grant. So you can see that there is nothing on these utilities, no part of these utilities that are being paid for by the reserves. So the bottom line, actually several bottom lines here, is that we have the resources from the Township Committee of the $3.4 million. And we are adding $430,509, so almost 600 of our reserves in order to keep the main library open and to not diminish, except by what I've already explained, the services that are available to them. So this is, it used to be that the percentage of our total budget that was municipal was like 99%. Now it's dropped to 88%. And we need the reserves in order to provide the services. We will end up the year. Mr. Shivitz has been active on the Finance Committee to ask us to set up some kind of protection against not the catastrophic or emergent kind of needs, but the planned maintenance that you're going to need. You have to have a repair schedule, a maintenance schedule for your replacement of computers and other equipment. So it's a good business practice to set up something here. And hopefully, I mean, we think this is kind of a drop in the bucket, but it's all we can put into it. So if these things do happen, and there are no other major changes, if the board, say, votes to close the branches this evening, those pluses and minuses are already into this budget, and we will end the year with somewhere around $300,000 to apply to 2014. And if there's any chance that 2014's municipal budget is going to be less than this, we will need to use every penny. So we've had a declining budget for the last 4 years, and increased mandatory expenses. It's been a real challenge, and I can't, understate the complexity of it, the difficulty of it. We started work on this in June when we got the chargebacks, and I must have done work with the finance committee. We must have done 14 budgets, trying to figure out which is the best one to present to the board. And this is where we see. Just wanted to let you know, where it was all going and where it was coming from.
Thank you.
Susan, can I ask a couple questions? Rob, you okay? If I ask Susan a couple questions about that? Of course. One of the ideas and the questions that I think was asked by a couple of members of the public was, what savings can be derived from cutting back hours? And if the main branch closed on Sundays, how would that change his budget? How would it change the salary, wages, and related expenses budget? How would it change the utilities budget? Has there been consideration in terms of if there were reduced hours at the main branch, whether or not you could throw off the $300,000 to $3,000 savings that we need in order to continue to maintain the branches?
Not in that neighborhood. I believe Leo mentioned, or somebody mentioned, what was done in Red Bank. And Red Bank was faced with a $40,000 deficit. We were faced with, over 2 years, a $1.2 million deficit. So I did look at it. I did look at cutting back morning hours, cutting back the least used day, cutting back a night, looking at the Sundays, but as Brock said, and it's very true, our use per hour on Sunday is huge.
Yeah, but Susan, I would think though that the proposal was 4 meetings ago where the trustees were considering whether to close the main branch on Sundays. We wouldn't have a room full of people now sitting here up in arms about the fact that the main branch is closing on Sundays. I think to some degree, in terms of how we're prioritizing as the trustees for this library, have we thoughtfully considered whether or not there are other options that's more responsive to the needs and really the desires of the community? If we closed on Sunday, okay, well, I don't see it in the report. If we closed on Sundays, how much would we save? Fair question.
It's a fair question. I don't have the answer to that, but we looked at...
Well, how would it impact the salaries? Like, would you pay people less?
I think that was one of the very first things we looked at. And we determined that the additional cost would not come anywhere close to saving the branches.
And on top of that, you're cutting a high volume time versus less volume.
But people would come another day.
That was considered.
That was considered.
To answer your question, that was considered.
Our business on Sundays includes a lot of people who can't come other days. They're working. This is their prime day. Yes, it was considered, and I don't have that data in front of me. I know how much it costs to run the branches. I know how much it costs to operate on Sundays, and it would not be that kind of...
That was explored thoroughly.
I'm sorry, does this budget contemplate closing any day?
This is not public session.
We did contemplate many varieties of closing and restaffing the branches.
And Susan, I really don't mean to be adversarial about it, but I think we do have a responsibility. And we do have a responsibility not just to demonstrate to the people that we've done this, but we actually have done it. In terms of considering the effect of limited hours, in terms of the budget savings, was there data compiled? Did people put together numbers and conclude how much the savings would be? And if the data was compiled in terms of how much the savings would be, where is that data?
I compiled a report on how much it costs to operate on Sundays. I don't have it with me this evening. I can go to my office and I can get that report if you would like to have that report. But I also think there was an environment of when you have a library such as the main library and the gamut of services that are provided to the public, and it is our #1 programming day. It is per capita the heaviest day of use. There was, once you looked at those numbers and looked at the usage side of it, a sense that that would have not been the best choice. Members of the Finance Committee, I think, can
Pretty much
assert
sums it
the
up.
fact
That was one of the very first things we looked at back in
scenario
June.
after scenario after scenario.
I think you also factored into that closing the main branch is the day we thought might be possible was Thursdays. I mean, I know that you looked at that.
Or Tuesdays and Thursdays. I mean, the branches seem to be pretty important to people. And I couldn't imagine if we were considering reducing hours that we'd have anybody sitting here right now. There'd be nobody sitting here. Nobody would care. But everybody cares about these branches. So why are we as a board elevating the hours above the branches?
Well, Steve, I have to say that doing what's right isn't always popular, and doing what's popular isn't always right.
Yeah, we have a responsibility to this community. And we have a responsibility to
I don't
reflect this
disagree
community's
with you
values.
at all, and if you were sitting in the Finance Committee meetings, like the 3 other trustees here were, 2 other trustees, rather, you would be very well abreast of the numbers and the figures and the rest of...
How many alternatives?
The alternatives we looked at.
Talk about it.
And I'm sure you did, but I think in the second area, not just whether we did, but whether or not the people have an opportunity to see that, to say, look, we considered everything, trust us, we're closing the branches. I think does a disservice to the level of responsiveness that we owe to the people, because we do have a fiduciary responsibility. I'm a member of this board, and I haven't seen the numbers. You're right, I don't sit on the Finance Committee. I rely upon the Finance Committee report. It's not in there. So I think it's a fair question, and I think they get in and ask questions, so I'm asking. I'd like to see the numbers in terms of how much we would save if we close hours. I think if we're going to vote in 2 minutes about closing these branches, Everyone deserves to see the numbers, to see if we can't save enough money to do that, that's off the table. I think everyone deserves to see the number instead of saying, trust me, we've already looked at it.
Or the option of shifting some hours to the branches. Some people propose, what happened to the proposals from those subcommittees? Were they even looked at to have 12 hours a week? I mean, I just feel
I
like,
think Mr. Seaver understands.
I'm sorry.
We met with them, they did make recommendations. The recommendations that the Finance Committee came back with was to, exactly as Mr. Winchell asked for, leave the books at the Navesink branch, cease staffing and funding to the Navesink branch. If at some point you'd like to vacate that building, we will assist you in that. And if you, in the meantime, if you'd like to staff with volunteers to open the doors, you're more than welcome to. The recommendation for the Bay Shore branch was to maintain a computer center, and the recommendation for the Lincroft branch was to close.
Because we're the least favorite child.
No, but
the issue with the Lincroft branch was the ongoing maintenance.
No.
Thank you. Order, please. The building issues with the Lincroft branch were forefront to our concerns and the financial concerns going through the years. As far as Bay Shore goes, we wanted to maintain internet and services for the people affected most by Hurricane Sandy. And the Navesink branch obviously costs the least to operate, but at the same time, we can't afford to have a staff there.
Brock, I have a question.
There was no money on that.
I have a question. No, but you can sound like that all you want. I think it's a fair question, and I think shushing them is one thing, but shushing me I think is another, because I've been charged with representing everybody here, and I want to know. I think depleting our reserves is a bad idea. I think the issue of the chargebacks is a red herring, and I don't think that has any place right now in terms of the decision we need to make tonight. Reducing hours at the main branch and reducing services at the main branch is a fair consideration. It is something, you guys looked at it first on the Finance Committee. Good idea. Look at it. I want to know what you looked at, and I want to know what you saw, particularly before I vote on the budget. So if you have the numbers here, if they're in the branch, let's adjourn for 5 minutes, go get them. I want to see them.
Is that a motion to adjourn for 5 minutes?
Motion to adjourn for 5
We're
minutes.
just going to recess.
Recess, 10
for
minutes?
10 minutes. So,
Is that a motion, Mr. Moran?
you can do a recess. You're the president.
Recess for 10 minutes.
Recess for 10 minutes.
Guess what, they get extra recess tomorrow.
All right.
School library, we had a computer class, and when the district chose to teaching of Spanish in the elementary school as opposed to teaching of computers, they dismantled the computer lab, they got rid of the equipment, they don't wear labs, everything's gone, it's on Aspen. Now, the third and fourth and fifth grade students must take all the assessments that the district has purchased on computers. We don't have computers, we have computer parts, laptops, so they are going to be used in the library. I've been 3 times in the library with my class all year. 2nd grade, 3 times in the library. It's a sin. And now the computer, the library is going to become a media center. What table for the children to sit at the library, and possibly have a library on the park. So we will not have a library. It will cease to exist as a library for the children. So we won't have a library in our school, and we won't have a library across the street. They clearly have decided what they want.
Right, everybody should be fair. That's they don't want to. We said, we heard what they said, and we decided. It's all about what they said. Contemplate getting more work. It was like, they were saying, how much did we spend on the 350 I'll tell you what, public library has something on Facebook every single day. I'm just going to say something on this one. Nowhere does it say anything about the grant. Nowhere does it say there's a public education.
operate on a yearly basis for 41 Sundays is a little bit over $50,000 a year for labor and $41,000 a year for other operations costs, making a total of about $92,000.
All right, so that's 91,303. I guess the only other things that I think that we've certainly talked about going into the reserves, which I think everyone has recognized was a bad idea. There was suggestion here that there, beyond closing on Sundays, whether or not there could be limited hours at the main and limited hours at the branches, or cutting some services at the main, or a combination of those three items. I think beyond that, though, if we're talking about alternatives and options, I think unless we're able to put together 303,000 from those 3 points, I'm not sure what other options there are. To what extent beyond just closing on Sundays, well, is there any benefit or has been any consideration by the Finance Committee in terms of whether or not reducing services is a viable option, or is a decision that we want to make where we reduce the services at the main branch in favor of keeping the branch open? So exactly how are we prioritizing that?
There were some suggestions with the branch closers were to promote the virtual branch and improve the services there. Initiate a book delivery service for homebound individuals. Establish a deposit collection of materials in senior living facilities and communities. Meet with the transportation service, local and county, to ensure that the main library will be a destination for them. As Tony Mercatante said, if they are to occupy the Bayshore branch, they will ensure areas for computer equipment and copiers, and which will actually end up being more hours than it is already. And they would be ours. And we would make them. Be in contact with the schools and teachers to come pick out materials that they can use in the schools, in the classrooms. Initiate 4th and 5th grade library skills training program where we come to the area schools and conduct a web class. For preschoolers, the main librarians already have scheduling additional story times during the same day of the week that they were at Bayshore branch, and will increase promotion of the books in schools programs. And the book drop would remain there until May 1st, and that's the Bayshore branch.
Was there a positive reaction from the Bayshore representative about that?
I just heard about that now. I mean, all I knew about was the computers. I had never heard this stuff.
Well, the way this transpired, we had our last meeting on February 7th.
That wasn't even brought up then.
7th, and we took what was asked.
After you
From
left.
the wish list.
After you left.
There was nothing that we received in writing, but we
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing it.
your surveys and the input and thought about other services that we could provide to them.
Why did they just close on Sundays in the summer?
It was a contractual matter, and that is just the way it played out when library services were initiated on Sundays. It was something that was negotiated. It's not necessarily what the library wanted, but it was what we were able to agree to in terms. And many libraries are closed on Sundays because of, personal habits of families and being on vacation and that sort of thing. So I think that was also part of it. It has not been revisited since it was initiated in the contract about 6-7 years ago.
What type of response was there from the public when that decision was made?
It was almost immediately extremely well received.
So how do we know that closing the main on Sunday will be viewed negatively by the public across the board?
Well,
at least dealing with that $100,000.
What about Thursday?
It is true that taking something away is very painful. And that is, we would expect that as well. I think that if this were on the agenda, this audience would be very full of people who objected to that. That's just human nature, and when something.
And it was negotiated as part of the collective bargaining process? That was part of the...
It was part of the collective bargaining process, yes.
The collective bargaining process that's going on right now is going to result in changes to the salary and the salary-related budgetary items starting calendar year 2014.
I advise you not to comment on it at this point.
Just in terms of when it takes effect? When the budget would take effect?
I would advise you not to comment at all on it.
I mean, there's a general question.
Is there a general question?
This contract negotiations, Brock, is for, in terms of when is the existing collective bargaining agreement over? When does that end?
So for I could answer that. So 2013 through 2015. It's a 3-year contract.
We're beginning working under an expired. So we're working under an expired contract. So it would be beginning, I guess, January 1st of 2013 through December 31st of 2015.
So closing the main branch on Sunday is part of the collective bargaining process 6 or 7 years ago. What discretion would we have right now to do that? If we have a collective bargaining agreement that's in place right now, and it's in place for the remainder of the calendar year, do we have any discretion right now in terms of hours of operation and how that would affect our salary under the present collective bargaining agreement? Do you understand the question? If we made the decision tonight, instead of closing the branches, then we're going to slash hours at the main library, would we have the power to do that, given the fact there's an existing collective bargaining agreement in place?
For budgetary reasons, municipal entities and boards of education can always reduce staff. Typically, working conditions, things like that, salaries, they have to be negotiated. But if you're, for budgetary reasons, can't afford to operate in a certain way, then you just reduce in force. Salaries would be the same unless you could negotiate. You can't reduce salaries.
Right. You couldn't cut salaries under the present collective bargaining agreement.
Full-time, part-time, you could do
But
reduction.
the layoff plan, for example, is one which we share with the bargaining unit, and we follow all the civil
service
guidelines
requirements too.
on getting that plan approved, and we expect to lay off 2 full-time and 6 part-time people.
But I guess the point I'm getting to is even cutting hours even a viable option? Can we cut hours and say we're closing on Sundays, we're going to save $91,000, but can we do that and just effectuate that by layoffs? It wouldn't seem it would work by doing layoffs. We'd have to cut hours, and we can't cut hours because there's a collective bargaining agreement in place, right? Is that?
They're out of contract right now, expired at the end of 2012.
Well, even though it's an expired contract, the CBA is still the CBA, but I think what you would have to do is cut hours and then, reduce in force accordingly to service the number of hours that you have. So I do think the library probably does have purview to set its hours, and if it can't afford to stay open, I guess you're open 7 days a week in the winter, if you can't afford to do that. I don't think that the collective bargaining agreement or the terms and conditions are going to force you to do that if you can't afford it. You're just going to cut accordingly, and you would, we'd have to move the hours around for different employees. You would have to structure your workforce a little differently, but I think it could probably be done. I don't think I don't think the CBA would force us to stay open 7 days a week forever, unless the union said, well, you have to. I don't think so.
Mr. Monahan, there are provisions that we've thought about for Lincroft as well as for Navasing. And they were crafted after the meeting, and also input by Mr. Winchell by email, because he was unable to attend that particular meeting, and trying to think of key things at each location. And an absent member of the Board of Trustees was very big on the virtual library, because it's a 24/7. I also want to say that one of the results of the survey, before Brock goes on, that was quite surprising to us was that there appeared to be, I want to characterize this correctly, not as strong an interest in the library as a place to borrow materials, or as it was as a community center, as a place to meet and see your friends. In fact, there was a willingness expressed from meeting one that if we could find a way to fund some temporary, some abbreviated service, that we didn't need to buy materials. And that was counterintuitive to what a branch library is, and it presented us with a dilemma. There was also very clear from the beginning that we were not going to get anything from the Board of Ed. That there was not going to be a sit-down or a meeting or anything from the Board of Ed, which has pretty much dismantled its school libraries by public vote several years ago. And the third thing was that there was no offer or hope of a sustained fundraising effort that could help meet the need. So it came back on our shoulders to try to figure something out. But we thought that we had a three-pronged approach for each one of the libraries. We were to try to come up with something or some things that were high on their list of priorities. And so he did mention the visual one with the computers.
In reference to Lincroft, we'll slowly remove the materials. We'll be in contact with Lincroft Elementary School and the teaching staff there, and allow them to pick out any materials that they would use for classrooms. Initiated 4th and 5th grade library skills training program to familiarize the students with the library and the resources available. We've had success in the past using a chat room with Harmony School, so we feel this is very successful and would be very useful. For the preschoolers, if the library can find volunteers among the staff to do this as an unpaid service, the preschool story time would be conducted one morning a week for an additional 6 to 8 weeks. The main librarians are already scheduling additional story times on the day of the week, Friday, as it was available at the Lincroft branch, and will be conducted by Miss Eileen when she is available. Increased promotion of the Books in Schools program, and a book drop will remain there until May 1st. In reference to Navasink, the collection will be left intact, save for some materials will be needed to be returned to main branch, and the computer equipment will also be returned. Also a 4th or 5th grade library skills program for Navasink School. For preschoolers, the main librarians are already scheduling additional story times for the day of the week as it was in NAVSync. Increase the promotion of books in schools, and the book drop again will also remain there until May 1st.
I also want to mention that while it's not there, that the main library has agreed to a dog program. It has story times morning, afternoon, and evening, even has some on weekends. We also have the Lego program that is very popular, I know, at NAVSync and is catching on at Bayshore and some of the other branches. So we will continue to have access for our children to have these same kind of activities at the main library.
Any other questions?
I really don't want to grandstand, and that's not why I'm doing this. I think it's kind of, I am fighting the tide here. I think the frustration that I feel, and I guess maybe I'm feeding off a little bit from the comments that I'm hearing, is that it's not impossible to save $303,000 in different ways. No one can tell me by looking at this budget that closing the branches is the only option. That I think if we needed to save $303,000, certainly taking the money from the reserves is option 1. Closing the branches is option 2. Options 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8 were never really put together. That if we closed the branches on Sundays, we'd save $91,000. If we got rid of the DVDs, we'd save $30,000. If we did this at the branches, we'd save another $20,000. And string them together different options and say, okay, here's a package where we could also save $300,000. Here's another package where we could save $300,000. We can cut the paid staff from 30 down to 25 and spread the people out in this different kind of way. Here are the different options that we can have, and they can all save the same amount of money. Now, which one is more important to us? And if we came to the conclusion that closing the branches was the least important, then we make that decision. And I guess the frustration, and maybe all this has happened with the finance committee, but with a budget of 4.2 in total available resources, where are all the other ideas of where the $300,000 can be saved from?
Going through, looking at alternatives.
Okay, what's option number 3? How else are you going to save $300,000? What are the options that the finance committee considered? The reserves, the branches, and what else?
Hours? Sundays?
Hours? Okay, tell me how you're saving $300,000 by cutting hours.
How are we? We're not.
Well, you can't tell me when there's a salary budget of $2.8 million, we can't save $300,000 there. You can tell me it's going to result in only one person being at the branch or something absurd like that, but you can't tell me we can't do it. We can. We can reduce force.
Well, would you like us to have no volumes added to the main?
I don't know. I just feel like before we make the decision that this is the only option, we at least owed the responsibility to say these are the other options too.
Every line item was carefully calculated and looked at, and reductions in line items were carefully looked over and questioned and looked at how we could cut them and reduce them.
So what other packages saved $303,000?
We never put together packages, so to speak. We looked at every line item. There's significant use of other resources other than municipal allocation in almost every line item, except for salaries and wages and utilities.
That's the big one. It's $2.8 million at the budget.
Okay, well, at the end of the day, we're still spending $3.9 million when we're only getting 3.47.
You're right.
So I don't know where else to cut. Okay. And there's no other places to cut.
A lot of that money's coming out of those reserves, $460,000, and that's gone. When it's gone, it's gone. You don't have it back next year.
No, and I'm not suggesting there's better options. I guess have we really spent the time to consider them all? Because there are other ways we can save $300,000. You can, and I'll accept the answer that here are all the other ways. They're all worse ideas. But what are the other ideas?
Yeah, really, Steve, what we probably need to do is some of those other things on top of this. It's not this or that, it's this and that.
Okay.
That's not bad. When we put from the reserves, there's no going back. This reserve money's going to be gone just faster if we take your approach. And so we'll be in the same situation just 1 year from now. What sense is there in that? And worse, actually.
Okay?
What about Thursdays? What do you say by closing Thursdays?
Public comment session, thank you.
Okay, but I've asked that, you can answer it, right?
And how many of the staffs are already vacated, so you're not really changing staff, because positions are already vacated? So we lost 2 staff, 6 part-time.
To pay benefits.
I think also a question here is, and believe me, I'm a fan of the branches, but I think, how much do you want to water down services to the whole township? I mean, you're not going to have anything good in Maine or the 3 branches if you really do some of these things that you think might be viable.
I think the main branch is outstanding, and I think my personal priority, I would want to see this watered down to any rate degree in terms of the services it provides.
Well, that's what you're suggesting. That's what,
I think are a little, but
Steve, that's what you're suggesting.
well, no, I'm not.
Yes, it is.
No, I'm suggesting that there be thoughtful consideration to those options. That's what I'm suggesting. Okay, so you say.
Oddly enough, the DVDs have increased in usage and the book usage has gone down. Which, it's true.
No, but you're talking about core essential library services.
So you're suggesting, Steve, that we close here, the main branch 3 days to keep the satellite branches open? That's ridiculous.
You didn't say 3 days.
Close it early.
If 1 day is 90,000,
No.
But after next year, we're going to do that anyway, because next year that money's gone still, and then we're back to a situation.
Well, the only thing I'm suggesting is all these combinations of ideas, that at least we should have different combinations of ideas. So at least we could say on the table, this saves 303, this saves 303, this saves 303. Which one do you want to do? And I'm not being given any of those options. I'm being given one option saying, close the branches, it saves $303,000. Trust me, we looked at everything else. And I'm not comfortable with that suggestion. That's what I'm saying.
Well, the layoffs will save $303,655 along with the branch closings. $205,307 of that is from the layoffs. That was a big bite to lay off this many people.
And I don't want to argue for the point of argument, but if you close the main on Sunday, if you got rid of the DVDs, if you close all the branches on Tuesdays and Thursdays, how much do you save? Nobody knows. Like, are there combinations? Or, okay, instead of opening at 9, you open at 11, you close on Sundays, you close the branches on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you cut the DVDs in half. How much does that save? Like all these different combinations of ideas. It's a $4 million budget. Can't we, and at least, we should have the options on the table.
Steve, we've gone through all.
Okay, well, not with me, you haven't, but that's okay.
That's what the finance committee
We
was
have
for.
contractual obligations too, to keep people employed at a certain level. And if you
I would like
close
to
a
make
few
a
hours
motion
there and a
to
few hours
adopt
there, how do
the budget.
how do you honor the contract that we have with the employee that has to put in 35 hours a week?
And Susan, if we can't do it, we can't do it.
And that was one of our concerns,
Okay.
with an hour here or 3 hours there.
So
We
is
still
that
have
the
to
answer, we
put
can't
in
cut hours
35
because the contract, and that's the question I asked earlier, does the existing collective bargaining agreement inhibit our ability to effectively cut the hours to save the
It
$300,000?
doesn't inhibit you from changing hours, but, you know, certain classes of library employees are guaranteed certain numbers of hours by virtue of the CBA. So you would be changing your workforce when they're working, but the number of hours, I'm not negotiating the contract, so I don't know what's in it, but I suspect they're guaranteed a certain number of hours. So what you would end up doing is laying off people and filling in hours, picking up hours elsewhere, basically.
And the finance committee did the math on it.
I think that we recessed so that the director could give you some information about what closing a day would save. I don't know if that information
I
is
think
satisfactory.
we did due diligence on it. Do I have a report on it? No.
I'm just wondering if those ideas were fully explored and what the conclusions were in terms of.
Explored from day one, our very first meeting.
I have a question for you.
sir, it's not public session, I'm sorry.
thing too is, when I think of the word layout, it's not a good word. I mean, we really want to have a library. Do the people want us to have a library where laying people off? Just, you know,
Can't they work at our branches instead? They're fulfilling their hours?
I don't think you
at
can
the
keep,
branches.
I think part of the savings of the cost to keep the branches would be to have the layoffs. And if you're going to have the layoffs, then you can't have the people in the branches.
Ms. Green, do not engage in public, not public session. Sorry. Thank you.
Motion to adopt the budget.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Any further discussion?
Any closing comments?
Any closing comments? Any? Roll call. Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. DeKalb?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert? Mr. Shibitz?
Yes.
Mr. Monahan?
No.
Ms. Wilson?
No.
Ms. Breen? Ms. Breen?
Louder.
Can I abstain?
You may. You abstain?
Be bold.
Yes, no, or abstain?
Of course, you can abstain, I would, and prefer that you not abstain on the budget vote. I think if you want to abstain, there's certainly nothing I can do to stop you. If there's more information you'd like, or something that would help you vote, either way, or if there's something you'd like to say about your vote, I could, but I can't stop you from abstaining, is the answer to your question.
Well, I really want to vote no, but I also think that would be wasting all the work that's been put into this.
But your conscience is amazing.
I don't like all these, I vote no, say no.
Okay, please.
No prompting from the audience.
I appreciate the encouragement from the crowd, but we do need to.
Yea or nay?
I'm going to go against my heart, vote with my brain and say yes.
Budget next.
Motion carries.
Ms. Breeden, thank you. I know it's difficult, and I also will go on record as saying that from a municipal perspective, it's better to have 5 votes and just to make it a clean vote. I know you've had serious reservations about it, but I do appreciate your voting as a president.
Next item on the agenda, new business purchasing resolution. Resolution 2013-16. It's a request, sorry, for electronic database. Something we do. Yeah.
16 and 17 are part of the continuation of the request for non-exempt services for the proposals that we award towards the beginning of the year. Those non-exempt Services include subscription of electronic databases, which is the resolution 16 and 17, is a vendor that supplies books, electronic, not electronic resources, excuse me, books through an electronic interface, and legal reference books and directories. It's a Bodart company is one which has a long history of supplying certain materials that we can't get from some of the available vendors that we do business with.
I have a request on this, and not on this report this moment, but since this topic is up. When we have these type of resolutions that require vendors of this size, can ahead of time, can we be sent a website link to take a look at them, see who they are, kind of just get a feel for what kind of company we're dealing with?
Well, yes, we can certainly do that, and we do have their proposals here this evening, if you want to take a look at them before you. These are big companies in the library and information world. ProQuest is a company that is, I think, pretty much its entire business is on full text newspaper and magazine and other types of interfaces. So it does provide to us a New York Times full text remote and in-house, as well as some other services. And Bodart, as I said, is one of the 4 major jobbers for books and other resources. It had established itself as a vendor that schools use in particular. It's very helpful to use Bodart for books and series to establish orders with them so that we, because series are so popular with young people, that they keep us up to date with not missing a volume of a series. Are there any questions about purchasing resolutions 16 and 17? Does someone want to bundle them together and make a resolution to accept?
So somebody should do that.
Okay, we have a resolution made by Ms. Green. Do we have a second?
Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Seibert?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. DeCampis?
Yes.
Mr. Shivia?
Yes.
Mr. Monahan?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson? Ms. Green?
There's one more purchasing resolution, number 18, which was not in the packet, because actually it just came up today, with the fact that we received these bids, we're not awarding a contract, but we have a repair to our HVA unit number 3, which I mentioned before. It's a pretty significant repair. Now, I've gotten to the point where our system is approaching 10 years old. A lot of parts are out of warranty. This is typical of a modern HVAC system, even though it is carrier equipment and it is very good equipment. It is exposed to the elements on the roof, and the comfort of our staff and the public is very important. It's been quite cold in our children's room now, and this company has spent a great deal of time, as automated building control, spent a lot of time trying to diagnose the problem, even bringing in some specialists to help with that, and they have reduced their original quote when I kind of choked about the expense. And we will be very well protected by the award of the bid, because the bids were in the $21,000, $22,000 range and not the $30,000 range that we were expecting, and that will be for both maintenance and repair. But this falls outside of the award of those bids. So resolution 2013-18 specifies automated building controls in the amount of $6,950, and the fact that we have a repair budget that has sufficient funds in it for that.
A question on this one, going forward, has the HVA system been added to the maintenance reserve budget or factored in?
It was in the regular operations budget,
Okay.
but this is a repair, a specific repair.
Motion to accept.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Mr. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. DeCantis?
Yes.
Mr. Shivia?
Yes.
Mr. Monahan?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson? Yes. Ms. Breen?
Yes.
Public session.
I am Sandy McGraw. I'm Sandy McGraw, I'm staff representative for Communication Workers of America. For any of you on the board who don't know me, good evening. Just want to clarify a couple of things. We are in negotiations. We opened a couple weeks ago, I think it was about a month ago now, and we had our second session today. When we're in negotiations, we have a media blackout. We do not discuss what we're doing in negotiations. But a lot of things I've heard here tonight, you've got a lot of good staff working here. I represent 11 townships and boroughs and 3 judiciary units. The staff here, they're dedicated to their job. They love their work. And we are in the process of trying to help the library in any way we can. But I can't divulge any more than that about negotiations. I've been here for 4 years as their staff rep. Susan is fair. Everybody that I'm working with is fair. And I don't like some of the comments I've heard about let's cut staff. Well, we've talked about that. She has cut staff. And we have tried to work in any way we can, and we will continue to assist the library in staying in the blacking if we can. But I just wanted to get that point across tonight. We work very well together. I think we're fair. The union's fair. And
Let me just say, you're 100% right in terms of media blackout. This board does not negotiate in public. I think there were some general questions I tried to answer, but you're 100% right, and I know the board will similarly be guided by that principle, not...
And I just want to remind, I
Totally,
understand that.
totally.
And the other thing I think was mentioned also, okay, the contract has expired. The contract has expired, but we work under those terms and
That's
conditions.
absolutely
until
true.
we get another one, and both sides have ratified.
Absolutely true, full force and effect.
Thank you.
I agree with 100% of your comments. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
Here for South Lee, 121 Cranberry Court, Middletown. One comment was made during the dialogue, and it was that apparently the public in institutions such as this, they want a community center and not a library only. Is this board aware as to the legal status of this building institution as just a library and or community center? If it is a community center, then it should be the Middletown Township Library and Community Center. Maybe some of the problems that have been booted around here tonight is due to the fact of not only need, but want. Need should be met, wants should be really discussed. It's the same thing like collective bargaining agreements. There's a lot of needs and there's a lot of wants. Where the wants come in, well, that's the tough area. Can you answer questions at this time? I believe it's open to answers. I know it's late, but I'm waiting here too, and I have places to go, namely home. Can you ask questions?
From a legal perspective, this is a public session. The board's not required to answer questions. It's only for the public to comment. This board in the past has answered some questions, so I'll leave it to the chair, the presiding officer here, to make a decision on whether your question will be answered.
State your question.
Are 3 members of this board on the Finance Committee, and are they involved in the collective bargaining sessions?
3 members of the board are on the Finance Committee, Mr. Shevius, Mr. Nelson, and myself, and Mr. Cordiano, I apologize, who is not here tonight. Myself and Mr. Nelson and Ms. Breen are on the negotiating.
Also 3 members of the Finance Committee.
Two members of the Finance Committee, myself and Mr. Nelson.
Are involved in the
negotiating. And Ms. Breen.
Okay. I think I'll end it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn.
My name is Melanie Elmager from Green Tree Terrace in Lincroft. Just had a few things I wanted to mention tonight. Susan mentioned about rewriting some documents, and I really strongly encourage this board to immediately review your strategic plan, because there are many flaws in the strategic plan, or things that it omits that doesn't really address the things that we've discussed in the last 6 months or year. It also doesn't take into consideration the impacts to the community and how the community can increase the demand for library service, such as when populations increase, schools close their libraries, when there's an influx of residents and things. As far as the Board of Education stance on things, that's something that's going to affect library demand. And I don't think those things are really considered in the strategic plan. Also, what was alarming to me in the strategic plan is that when that was presented to the state librarian, there was a graph there that showed all the appropriations going up. And that's clearly not the case. And I think this board has always felt that wasn't the case for at least the past year. So I guess maybe it's a timing thing, but clearly that section has to be rewritten to show what you think these appropriations are going to be. You keep saying they're going to go down. So if that's projected there as up, it should be shown as down, down, down. I don't understand why that document can stand like that. Also, I saw an emphasis for the need for a regular report in a public forum to the Township Committee on the status of library services. And I go to a lot of Township Committee meetings, and I can only recall one time, maybe, that Mrs. O'Neill was at a library board meeting. I don't know if this is something that perhaps the mayor's appointee is supposed to do, but I've never seen them comment at all about what's happening at the library, what's new, what's any issues, any problems, and maybe if there was that open communication on a monthly basis as is stated in your strategic plan, that maybe the public would become more aware of what's happening here, and we wouldn't be surprised by these things.
The mayor's secretary receives the board packet every month.
Okay, then but you put the onus on yourself, saying that you are going to report this to the Township Committee and have this said in a public forum.
I was just clarifying.
But that doesn't take the responsibility off you. You've written it in your plan, you've said you're going to do this, and it never gets done. And we need to know about it, and I want that reporting done, because you're saying you're going to do it. I also think that the Lincroft Ranch disrepair is somewhat exaggerated. I think that I had proposed to the Finance Committee that we could put some of the repairs out to the public to ask for professionals within the public, as long as the value of the repair was less than the threshold that would have to go out to bid, that perhaps people from the community would come forward, fix the roof, fix electrical problems, things like that. And that was one of the proposals I had mentioned to the Finance Committee, and I don't know if that was something that has been looked at clearly.
All the recommendations from the branch representatives were discussed.
Okay, well, that to me is a savings, and I didn't hear it mentioned. So, a potential savings. So, two other things. One is that last month, when Mr. Cordiano said he wasn't going to be here tonight because of his cruise, I was wondering if anybody from this board spoke to Dr. Scharfenberger and told him, your representative is not going to be here for this very important, critical vote that's going to close the 3 branches, and you've said that you're in support of keeping the branches open, so perhaps you could come to this meeting. Did anybody talk to Dr. Scharfenberger in this past month, knowing that his representative wasn't going to be here to stand in his place? Did anybody talk to him?
I don't know if Mr. Cordiano did. That's his responsibility, is to communicate
Okay.
back to...
Okay, I will ask him next month. That could have been a yes vote. I mean, a no vote. It could have been a no vote to close to not pass this budget if he's going to stand by what he's been saying publicly. And the last thing is that the reason why the Lincroft community feels so robbed here is because right at this moment, we are losing 2 libraries at once, to the day practically. Our current school library, which has been funded generously by our PTA, is getting reduced to carts. So your proposal that the teachers somehow come to your Lincroft branch and pull out resources that they can use in the classroom, we have a wonderful library at Lincroft School. The kids don't go there. They can't use it. It's basically going to be grade carts that they're going to wheel to the classrooms with some nonfiction, some fiction. They can't take any more materials. So our children who live the farthest from the main branch, and it would require at least a half-hour round trip for a child to get to a library in the town of Middletown, a town of 60,000 people, 67,000 people, for our Lincroft children to get to the library requires a lot of time because they don't have those resources there. And I know that this library's mission is to make sure that there aren't areas of the township that are underserved. Well, I think you've just created that tonight. Lincroft will be an area that is underserved. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Anybody else?
Hi, Maggie Reardon from Navesink. I just had a couple of comments. One on the budget, there's an error, and the year-end balance is actually $70,000 less than what's posted here. And the other thing was that electricity is $130,000 for the year. When I come in the middle of the night to drop off my late boats, I see that every single light in the building is on, and it seems like if you just turned off half of them, you could have saved $40,000 to $50,000.
Is it Reorden?
Reardon, R-I-O-R-D-A-N.
We have a standard practice that after the janitors leave, and they do stay after hours, those lights are manually turned off, and they do not come on again until 6 o'clock in the morning.
I've never seen, when you drive around, I've never seen the corner where the quiet reading is in the children's room. I've never, ever seen those lights off.
Well, I beg to differ.
Every time I leave here on a Wednesday night, all the lights are on. So unless they're turning them off just for us.
I visit this library many, many times when the building is closed in order to get caught up on work and the lights are off. Now, it does happen occasionally that someone forgets, but this has been in place for many years.
It's not, hasn't been my experience.
Anybody else?
Linda Baum, 19 May Court. A couple of questions. One was regarding the presentation. Just looking at the numbers very quickly from memory. It looked like the healthcare number went down, and I'm assuming that's because fewer employees are afflicted. But the workers' comp number didn't go down. Wouldn't that also go down if there were fewer employees?
Linda, I tried to apply my best judgment on it, but when it came to a number that had been supplied by the township, I had really no choice but to put that number in here.
You know where I stand on that workers' comp number. I've done substantial research on that, so it is, in my opinion, about 75,000 or 80,000 too high annually. That said, I just want to recap something that was said a couple meetings ago. There was a comment by a board member, and I don't remember which board member it was. I think Mr. Nelson, it was you, that there was an expectation that the charges from the township would go up each year. You know, this idea that they are always going to go up. That may not necessarily be true. I'd like you to just, keep that in mind. It's something you should be reviewing each year rather than just expecting those numbers to go up each year. And an example I can give you of why they might decline. Right now, the pension numbers are pretty high because a large part of those numbers are deferred pension costs from prior years. So that there's going to be, they're increasing, and then at some point, hopefully, they'll decrease and then level out. And that's something that you should look for. And I'm still doing a little bit more research on that to find out when that will happen, and I'll let you know. So thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Moving on, we're going to go into closed session. The Open Public Meeting Act allows for the exclusion of the public from a portion of the public meeting that when certain matters which might endanger the public interest or risk of deprivation of individual rights are discussed. The Board of Trustees of the Middletown Township Public Library wishes to discuss the following matters in non-public closed meeting, with the resulting discussion being made public when a proper conclusion has been reached and there is no longer a need for confidentiality. The first matter being pending negotiations concerning a collective bargaining agreement with the CWA. And the second is any matter involving the employment, appointment, termination of employment, and the conditions of employment, evaluation, or any disciplining of any. And that is discussion of medical leave and performance of administrative personnel. So, motion to go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Monahan?